Hi everyone. Now we are going to learn about general account of nosocomial infections, which are also called as hospital associated infections or hospital acquired infections. Then how can we define this nosocomial infections? Let's see. So, an infection that develops in patient during the stay in the hospital or after patient discharge is going to be defined as nosocomial infection or hospital associated infection or hospital acquired infection. This can also be defined as an infection acquired by a patient during hospital care which was not present or incubating at the time of admission. This includes acquired in the hospital but appearing after discharge also. So then that kind of the infection is going to be simply called as nosocomial infection. Nosocomial infections, beside harming patients, also may infect some other persons like physicians, that are doctors, nurses, and the aides, those who are going to serve, and then visitors who are visiting the patients, all those people, and the salespersons, and delivery personals, custodians, and anyone who has contact with the hospital, and those all going to have the effect of this nosocomial infections. And these hospital infections may be iatrogenic, that means induced by some diagnostic or therapeutic intervention in the hospital. So those kind of the infections are called as iatrogenic, or they may be of opportunistic also. That means pathogens of low virulence may cause disease in the hospitalized patients whose immune system is weak. Okay, but however, uh, it must be clear that nosocomial infections are not synonymous to these iatrogenic or opportunistic diseases or infections, because these two terms are going to have lots of different with this nosocomial infection, which will take place only in the hospital environment. But where this iatrogenic or opportunistic can occur outside the hospital also. So that's how it nosocomial infection cannot be a synonym to this iatrogenic or opportunistic pathogens or infections. Okay, so let's move to the next one, that is sources of infection. That is, what are the sources of these nosocomial infections? So nosocomial infections come from either endogenous, that means the patient's own microbiota, because of having the weak immune system working. So obviously his own microflora or microbiota is going to act as a opportunistic and causing the diseases. Those are being called as endogenous type of infections. And then coming to the second type, exogenous. So what are exogenous? Exogenous sources may be inanimate sources like hospital staff or other patients, those are coming as visitors, or the beside patients. And inanimate sources can be food, water, air, urinary catheters, and then intravenous and respiratory therapy equipments, dialysis units. So all these are also going to be included in the causing of sources of this nosocomial infection. So that's how the sources of nosocomial infection is mainly classified into endogenous and exogenous. So endogenous means patient's own microbiota. Exogenous means animate as well as the inanimate sources are involved in causing this nosocomial infections. And let's move, what are the factors that are involving in causing of these nosocomial infections? So obviously there are various factors that contribute to the development of this nosocomial infections and also involved in the severity of infections. And here I am going to explain the few of them. So let's see. So hospital staff, mainly the hospital staffs move from patient to patient, isn't it? So obviously they are going to have the increase in the probability of transfer of pathogens from one patient to another. So their movement is going to be involved in causing this nosocomial infection. That is one. The second one, wide variety of pathogens may be present in large numbers in the hospital environment. So because of having the different kinds of patients with different type of infections, obviously pathogen existence will occur in the hospital environment. Then coming to the housing of different types of patients in rooms and wards increases chances of cross infection. That means from one patient to other patient there may be a cause of cross infections. Then coming to the compromised host, many hospitalized persons or patients have weakened resistance to infectious diseases due to their illness or the therapy that they are undergoing, and such type of the patients are going to be called as compromised host, and these will become highly susceptible to infections. Okay, then one more factor is many invasive procedures such as that is hypodermal injection, then spinal punctures, biopsy, that is removal of tissue samples, or drawing blood or fluids breach the skin barrier, and slightest lapse in asepsis during these procedures may lead to the nosocomial infections. And advances in the treatment of cancer, organ transplantation, and then implanted prosthesis and other sophisticated medical technologies enhance the risk of infection to patients. And one more factor is injudicious use of common antibiotics. So this is going to play a crucial role in developing the antibiotic resistance to pathogens. Okay, so you are supposed to control infection resulting in multi-drug resistance in the pathogens. Then certain therapeutic drugs like steroid drugs used for controlling inflammation increases the susceptibility to hospital infection. And finally, in maternity wards of hospitals, newly born babies are usually susceptible to certain infections. They lack, because we know that they lack well developed defense mechanism in their body. So obviously they are also going to have this nosocomial infections effect. So these are the few or various types of factors that are contributing to the nosocomial infections. And then moving to the microbiology of hospital infections, we are having many strains of bacteria, fungi, viruses which are involved in causing these nosocomial infections, out of which the Staphylococcus species are going to be the largest collective cause of these hospital acquired infections, and are also very prevalent as the causative agents of wound infections. Okay, in recent decades, even the gram-negative bacilli like E. coli, and then Klebsiella, then Enterococcus, Proteus, and even the Serratia. So, or have become the most important group of these nosocomial infections. Okay, and E. coli is the most common cause of mainly urinary tract infections in the hospitals. And along with that, we are also having some other, as I told you, Enterococcus species, Klebsiella, pneumonia, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and Candida albicans infections are also occur very common in hospital environment. And out of these all, the Pseudomonas and the Candida species are going to act as an opportunistic pathogens as they commonly occur in the hospital environments and infect the patients whose defense mechanism is weakened. Okay, and as I already told you, this is the most contaminant, or it is going to be the most prevalent opportunistic pathogen. Which one? Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Okay, so here are the list of some nosocomial infections and the microbial pathogens that are involved in causing these infections. So let's have a glance of it. So the first one is the burn infections. So the burn infections are going to be mainly by, I told you, the Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Then you're having the Staphylococcus aureus, Streptococcus pyogenes, and Acinetobacter. Then the eye infections, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Staphylococcus aureus. I told you this Staphylococcus as well as nowadays Streptococcus even become more prominent in causing these nosocomial infections. Then gastrointestinal infections, mainly Salmonella species, then Shigella and some viruses, hepatitis A, all those things. Then respiratory infections, again the Staphylococcus, Pseudomonas, then Haemophilus influenza, Enterobacter, Klebsiella, Escherichia, Echinotobacter, and respiratory viruses. Then urinary tract infection, I told you E. coli is the most common cause of urinary tract infections in hospitals. Okay, so here are the other list: Pseudomonas, Proteus, Enterococci, Staphylococci, Candida albicans. Then moving to wound and skin infection, I told you the Staphylococcus is the one which is prominently involved in wound infections. That is Staphylococcus aureus. Then comes to E. coli, Proteus, bacteroids, Enterococci, and Staphylococci. And other type of the nosocomial infections where it is going to be considered as miscellaneous, or AIDS virus, hepatitis B virus, and hepatitis C virus. Okay, so these are all the few types of nosocomial infections and the microorganisms which are involved in causing these infections. Okay, let's move to the next topic, that is transmission routes. How these nosocomial infections are being transported from patients to other, or from the hospital environment to the patients. So these are the few photographs of different prominent nosocomial infection causing organisms. So this is a Pseudomonas, and this is Streptococci, and here it is E. coli, and this is the Staphylococci. Okay, so that's all about the microorganism. Then move to the transmission routes. See, these nosocomial infections are transmitted involving majorly five main routes, which are going to be by the contact transmission, then airborne transmission, then we are also having the oral route transmission, then parental route, that is inoculation transmission, and self-infection transmission. So those are all we'll discuss in detail one by one now. So coming to the first one, contact transmission. So here the contact transmission, uh, most of the infections are mainly transmitted by contact. It may be by direct from person to person, or indirect through the contaminated hands or the equipments. The species that are getting involved in causing this contact transmission is mainly Staphylococci and Streptococci by direct contact, and indirect contact is going to be by enterobacterial diarrhea and Pseudomonas aeruginosa are some of the examples of indirect cause of this contact transmission. Then coming to airborne transmission. So the causative agents of diseases like tuberculosis, that is TB, pneumonia, staphylococci, sepsis, isn't it? And even measles, and then gram-negative respiratory infections are usually airborne airborne, so hence transmitted to patients in hospital by inhalation of droplets, droplet nuclei, dust of bed or dust from bedding and floors, and exudates released from wounds during brushing, and from skin by natural shedding of skin scales. So by all these routes, you are going to have these nosocomial infections of airborne transmission. And the best examples of these are, as I told you, is Streptococcus pneumoniae, Staphylococcus species, and then some of the gram-negative bacteria. And these are the two modes of transmission routes. And let's see the next one, that is oral route. So pathogens that cause gastrointestinal infections are generally transmitted via food served to the patients in the hospitals. And food supplied in the hospitals may contain antibiotic resistant bacteria such as E. coli, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Klebsiella species, isn't it? These bacteria colonize the gut and later cause infection in the susceptible patients. So this is all about the oral route. Then moving to the parenteral route transmission, which is also called as inoculation transmission. So here you can see the different pictures where how you are going to have the infection transmitted from the hospital by the dialysis equipment, or by the contaminated vaccination equipment, or by non-sterile dental practices, or by contaminated drug needles. So these are all things can have the route of transmission by parental route transmission. Okay, So this parental route transmission, a common route of transmission of pathogens in the hospitalized patients during some decades ago, has become infrequent with the use of syringes, that is single-use disposal needles, syringes, and other devices. So obviously, what are supposed to do? Proper sterilization of surgical instruments, isn't it? But certain hospital infections easily get transmitted via blood transfusion and donation. And contaminated blood products, contaminated infusion fluids, and contaminated sharp instruments also help to occur hospital infections in patients. Okay, so this is how the fourth type of route transmission, that is parental route transmission, which is also called as inoculation transmission. And the last fifth type of route transmission is self-infection transmission. So self-infection. So self-infection transmission may take place as a result of the transfer of pathogens present in the nose or over the skin, like staphylococci and streptococci, to the wounds of the patients. And some certain coliform bacteria or anaerobic bacteria released from the bowel of a patient during surgery may infect the same patient. So these are the some cases where self-infection transmission may occur. So we have discussed about the 5 routes of transmission. One is the contact, second one is the airborne, third one is the oral route, and fourth one is the parenteral, that is inoculation transmission, and fifth one is the self-infection transmission. Now we are going to discuss about the common hospital infections and the pathogens involved in causing those nosocomial infections. So here also we are going to discuss about 4 major types of infections. One is the urinary tract infection, then we will discuss about the wound, then respiratory, and then bacteremia and septicemia. Let's come to the first one, that is a urinary tract infection. Pseudomonas aeruginosa, E. coli, and then Proteus, and some sort of other gram-negative bacilli cause urinary tract infections in the hospitalized persons or patients. Okay, and the catheterization is the main source of such cases in patients. So what we should do? The catheterization with adequate precautions may cause even about 2% urinary tract infections, while the catheterization with dwelling catheters may result in 50% or more. Okay, and urinary tract infection can be prevented by, how you are going to prevent? Obviously by strict asepsis during catheterization. And indwelling catheters should be used with proper closed drainage only in unavoidable circumstances. So then only we can prevent this urinary tract infection. So you can see these are some bacteria that are going to be present in the responsible in causing the urinary tract infections. Okay, so let's move to the next type of infection, that is a wound infection. So most of the wound infections in hospitalized patients are related to surgery and show their symptoms within a week of the surgery. And infections caused by Clostridia bacteria and Streptococcus pyogenes are going to be manifest within a day or two. Okay, that means several bacteria are going to show their symptoms at several times. For example, Clostridia bacteria and Streptococcus pyogenes manifest, that means they show their symptoms within a day or two after the surgeries or hospitalized patient. While staphylococcal infections typically take 4 or 5 days. Okay, and infections caused by gram-negative bacilli may take 6 or 7 days to appear the symptoms. So there are several factors which are influence these what we call it as occurrence of wound infections after surgery. So we cannot tell this, that. So there are several factors that you are going to see after the surgery aspects. So these factors are mainly the site and the duration of surgery, and the health of the patient, is also very important. The skill of the operator, that is a doctor, how he is going to do the surgery is also very important, isn't it, etc. And nowadays, as we are having the laparoscopy, is going to reduce this kind of wound infections during the surgery. So it has been ascertained that the routine preoperative antibiotics do not prevent wound infections, though they may sometimes be delayed. Okay, and whenever antibiotic over that is cover prevent wound infections become necessary in special cases, it should be given parentally immediately before, during, and after surgery. So that is very important. However, umbilical stumps, burns, ulcers, and infection cut downs are the non-surgical sites of wound infections. We are discussing only surgery, but these are also going to be of our other sources of wound infections. And Pseudomonas aeruginosa is the most important pathogen that causes infection in burns. Okay, so this is all about the wound infection. Then we are moving to the respiratory infections. So here in the respiratory infections, we are going to have the mainly Staphylococcus aureus, Haemophilus influenza, then Streptococcus pneumoniae, and Enterobacter, Klebsiella, and other gram-negative bacilli are the common pathogens of the respiratory infections. And then antibiotic treatment of these pathogens is unsatisfactory as they show multi-drug resistance. These are all have developed the drug resistance. Post-dural drainage is useful in the prevention and management of such infections. Okay, and in addition to these, the aspirations in unconscious patients and pulmonary ventilation generally lead to nosocomial pneumonia, especially in patients with pre-existing cardiopulmonary diseases. And these are all the different types of respiratory infections. So your cold, flu, okay, so all these things, and your sore throat, these are all because of the respiratory infections. And then coming to the next one is bacteremia and septicemia. So bacteremia, septicemia, so resembles the word, but a slight difference is there. Bacteremia means the presence of or appearance of the bacteria in the blood is called as bacteremia. And septicemia means the increase in the growth of bacterial number, that the multiplication of the bacteria and causing the infection. Okay, that is infection of blood streams by microbes is going to be called as septicemia. And these are commonly caused by infected intravenous what we call as a cannulae. Because of the mainly injecting this cannula, you are going to have this blood infection. The longer the cannula are kept in situ, the greater the risk of infection. And even some what we are soapy that cut downs on the leg veins to place cannula for intravenous rehydration in children suffering from diarrhea generally get left in the place for longer periods, and that is the site bothered in diarrheal stools. That means while they are passing the stool, maybe these E. coli, all the things may attach at that cannula, and the blood of those children get bacteremia and consequently leading to septicemia if untreated, unnotified, resulting in death of many such diseased children. However, these infections can be prevented. How you are going to prevent? Can be prevented by proper skin cleaning before cut down and use of some stainless steel needles should be preferred over plastic cannulae. And also intravenous rehydration in diarrheal should be allowed only in emergencies and should be replaced by oral fluids as early as possible. And mainly the bacteremia Staphylococcus epidermis is often seen in patients with artificial heart valves. If not treated well in time, it may lead to the endocarditis. So that's how these are all the common hospital infections that we come across due to this that is nosocomial infections. Okay, then we are supposed to go with the prevention and control. So how you can prevent this nosocomial infections and all the things, let's discuss. So before that, here are some of the pictures that I want to make you some symptoms and signs of a hospital infection. So obviously, when you are infected with the pathogens, the first symptom is a fever, and even you can have headache, then rashes, and then severe coughing, and even the diarrhea. So the inpatient or outpatient or some of other attenders, visitors, all these doctors, physicians, all may have an experience of all these signs. So if you are having such signs, you may be coming in contact with the hospital. Then if you have these symptoms, then obviously that may be one of the reason of these hospitally acquired infections. Then how can we control or prevent? So it can be prevented. That means prevention and control of nosocomial infections rests on proper understanding of aseptic practices. Yes, obviously aseptic practices and careful attention to hygienic principles, and can also be achieved by some of the following steps. So let's see the first one. The hospital staff involved in the care of patient should know the basics of infection control measures. So the hospital staff, nurses, attendants, whoever are there, all should know the basics of infection control measures, such as proper handling of equipments, food supplies and excreta, then aseptic techniques and surgical wound care and dressing. So all these things should be of called as infection control measures that have to be followed by the hospital staff. Then the second one, the hospital personnel must practice proper hand washing procedure and must wear gloves when contacting mucous membranes and secretions, etc. So these are taking care of hospital staff or the personnel, because these are the one who is majorly involved in getting the cross infections from one patient to the other patient. And then moving to the thing, patient's skin must be disinfected before operation, and patients should be monitored with respect to frequency, distribution, symptomatology, and other characteristics common to nosocomial infection. That means they have to observe or put an eye even whether they did get any nosocomial infections or not. Then the prevention and control of nosocomial infections should be a permanent ongoing activity in hospitals. So when an epidemic is going to come, then only they are going to have a very careful attention. But when it is not there, they are going to be of very light going. So that should not occur. So there, that should be a, that means the prevention and control of these nosocomial infection should be a permanent ongoing activity in the hospital. As I told you, instead of it being employed when an infection outbreak takes place in hospital. So that's how we finish the different types of nosocomial infections, the route of transmission, and the organisms involved in it, and for factors contributing the nosocomial infection and sources of infection. That is mainly nosocomial infections, everything. Okay, so that's all about the nosocomial infections, which are called as hospital associated infection or hospital acquired infections. Thank you.